It's a real honor to be here with you today. Thanks for choosing us and taking the time after lunch to get over here. There may be other people who are straggling in after lunch. It was a pretty darn good lunch, so I don't begrudge them spending a few more moments at the trough. And this is about the basic knowledge for success in grazing. And we thought that it would be a good idea to kind of frame the enterprise as what it actually is, which is a connection to all things. And so that means it's a very big thing. It's a very big idea. It's as you engage in our little tiny ways, we are really doing something quite profound and important for the vital health of all things. And so that's kind of the basic approach that I take to it. In our own little ways, we're doing great things, or at least can. And so if we're going to talk about what success of some sort, why don't we talk about what that actually means? What does it look like? And I, as was noted, Julie is my wife, we've used the holistic management decision-making framework for about almost 30 years to kind of guide our work and our lives. And and one of the principles of that is to A, define and figure out what you're actually managing, and B, articulate what the life is that you want. In terms of people, for example, in our case, we want peaceful people. We need some economic security, so we have to have profitable businesses. We didn't inherit a ranch. All of our ranches are leased. We started out with $40,000 of debt and very little experience, but lots of energy and goodwill. And little by little, through using these principles, we've guided our little business toward solvency, and it continues to support our lives. So economic security and profit is a big part of our picture. In order to do that, we need livestock that are performing, doing well, getting fat, growing. And in order to have that and to have all these things, of course, we're looking for, we have to take care of the land. We have to produce or manage or nurture sunlight in its various forms through our land to create beauty and health and economic vitality, biodiversity. And the best way that we've kind of thought about this is to, if we're going to produce all these ecosystem services, if you want, in terms of people, we need food and fiber, nutrient-dense food that produces health in people. Can't actually see what you guys can see, so I'll just move over here a little bit. We need community intelligence and culture, beauty, of course, that makes our lives rich. Civilization is based on all these ecosystem services, and so that's ultimately what agriculture is supporting. And in order to do that, we have to have water cycling, water absorbing into our lands, really effective water cycles. I ask ranchers how effective their water cycle is and how much it rains before water starts shedding off their ranches. In our area, down about 150 miles south of here, we lease have 4 different ranching units. We lease actually 5 ranches. 2 are contiguous, from the central coast near Watsonville, which is about 10 miles from the coast, to Piscinas, which is about 40 miles from the coast. The precipitation goes down pretty dramatically from, say, 20 inches in Watsonville to 12 or 13 in Piscinas. But the water cycle is the effectiveness is about the same throughout that area, no matter if we get 20 or if we get 12. And after 4, 5, 6 inches, the water absorbs 4 or 5 inches or so, and then at the 6th inch, it starts moving off. And it moves off quickly, and the evidence is that the creeks turn brown, they start running, they turn brown, the Pajaro River turns brown, everything turns brown, the ocean turns brown. And all of that is our private property moving to the sea. And somehow ranchers who are extremely concerned about private property and so forth, and well, we should be, we're okay with this incredibly vital thing moving off of our land. And so if we get 20 inches of rain and you're only absorbing 6 and the rest of it goes into the sea, that's sort of a low bar. If you get 12 inches but only 6 inches absorbs in, again, you're hitting that low bar, but you're wasting 6 inches. And in our land, in our landscapes, that extra 6 inches would make a huge amount of difference. And so it's really important, if we're trying to produce all these ecosystem services, that we create landscapes that absorb and hold lots and lots of water by creating this soil carbon sponge. The evidence that we're trying to do that, not only that we're trying to do that, but that we are accomplishing that, is that the green season on our ranches is a little bit longer. We're not there yet in terms of what we'd like to have and what we think we need to have for a future of prosperity. And the one reason is because we can't do it on our ranches alone. If our neighbors don't survive, our community shrinks, dwindles, and we can't succeed if others fail. So can we extend the green season? Yes, we can. And this picture here is evidence of that. You can see the dark green inside that angular shape. I think you can see that. The dark green area is where we're grazing cattle. This was actually a snapshot of an aerial photograph, or an aerial photograph that was taken in 1995 of a state park where we graze cattle on only about 400 acres at that time. But the interesting thing is that outside that green line, where it's lighter green, kind of a wan yellowish green, is the same tools being applied, but they're being applied differently and they're having different results. So if we want to be successful as grazers, as ranchers, as farmers, and we can extend the season of the green, we're going to hold more water. We're going to produce more grass. More grass is going to produce fatter, more cattle. That's going to help us with our economics. It's also going to support all kinds of life that we don't even see, because frankly, we don't understand all of the complexity that we're managing out there. There's many of the critters out there that we share these places with that we don't really understand or know or see. And but if we have more water, water is the basis of all biological life. So we have more water, there's more opportunities for life. Biodiversity ensues, economic security ensues, more economic securities, more options for peacefulness among our families and so forth. So can we extend the season of green? Yes, we can. And we do this by creating the soil carbon sponge. Carbon, because of our land management, and I don't want to blame anybody or disparage anybody, but the bottom line is that civilizations have come and gone because of land management. As civilizations have eroded the capacity of their soil to support life, civilizations have gone away. And this has happened again and again throughout human history. And, we are being pushed at this point, our whole globe at this point is being pushed to the point where our systems are starting to show signs of collapse. And we land managers, especially ranchers, because we manage on a vast scale. And what are we managing on a vast scale? We're, as we heard yesterday, we're not producing anything, but we are moving sunlight, carbon dioxide, water, and we're nudging these things toward what we want, which is all these ecosystem services. And this graph in the top right corner shows is the results of soil carbon monitoring by the Soil Carbon Coalition. And it is showing that on our ranches, which are just like some of the ones you saw in the beef, they're not nearly as good as some of the as productive as the rangelands you saw on the beef tour. But through those very plants and our management of the photosynthesis capacity of our lands, we are adding soil, in this case 7% in the top 10 centimeters, 11% from centimeters 11 through 25, and 5% down to 40 centimeters. Now that's really good news, because carbon, when it's in your soil, can hold water. And carbon, as it leaves your soil, the water leaves right behind it, and then it's in the atmosphere, where it's a tremendous problem. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so that's basically what we're trying to do. We're trying to create virtuous cycles from bare soil, or wherever you find yourselves, to more and more healthy soils, plant communities, plant-animal communities, human communities as well. So this is kind of an interesting image to me, because most of us have seen the sigmoid curve that describes the growth rate of grass. When a grass is grazed or mowed or whatever, defoliated, the leaves are cut, it recovers slowly, stage 1, and then quickly in stage 2, and then slowly again as it senesces and shifts towards reproduction in stage 3. What is often not shown is the curve below it, the curve of the roots. Because as we're grazing our grasses, the roots also are affected, and it depends on how much you grazed your grass on how many of the roots are affected. And the idea is that, I think we heard in one of the presentations yesterday, is to try to, at 50%, that's a really ideal target, because root growth almost doesn't stop at all. Plants recover quickly, roots expand exponentially, and the carbon that is available through sunlight and photosynthesis moves into the soil, where it can build a soil carbon sponge and produce all these ecosystem services. That's really wonderful news. So it behooves us to really think in terms of, okay, we're looking at the leaves and the plant's recovery rate there, and the grazing there, but we really have to know that things are happening below ground too that are vitally important to our big aspirations. And so anyway, that is an image that has struck me as like, okay, that's an aha moment, and it is actually what I'm managing, and reminds me that I'm managing stuff I don't always see. I had a conversation after our last talk, because people often come up and say, and this gentleman did, he said, what do you do? We've had 50 inches of rain, and the cattle are unsettled, and I have to move them faster and faster, and I'm getting shorter and shorter recovery periods, and it's causing problems. And I said, well, how's your stocking rate? And it says, well, the stocking rate is pretty good, but I'm having these problems. And I said, okay, well, let's take a look at this stocking rate issue, because it's really important. Because a lot of the literature will say stocking rate drives profitability, and it does, sort of, right? So if you have stocking rate and you have no stock on the ranch, you have no income opportunities, right? But if you add 1 animal, you get some income. 2 animals, a little more income. 3, and so forth, up until what you might call the optimal stocking rate. And you can decide this based on your observation of how much grass is on the ranch. So you get to that optimal stocking rate, and there still is maybe more grass available. On a perfect year, maybe there's a little bit more, quite a bit more, I don't know. But then you hit some maximum, because we're really talking about a finite area. So as soon as you get towards that maximum, things get more stressful. And if you go over that maximum, you start losing money. So the funny thing is that at an optimal stocking rate A, you have X income. But then you go on, you increase your stocking rate thinking your income is going to go up, but you move over the hill because you start losing money because you're overstocked, and then all of a sudden you're at B, the exact same income level. So why are we pushing so hard to get to B rather than, trying to figure out where A should be? This is another curve that a guy named Graham Hand in Australia showed me, and because he overlaid the stress curve. Because all of us are saying, okay, the plants are getting stressed, we're creating mud, we understand that. Degradation happens when we get over our stocking rate. But there's other stresses as well. Because as you go down that B, and it's not kind of the nice gentle curve that I've drawn here, it's more like a drop-off. And the reason is because you start losing money, your bank calls the note, you don't have enough money to pay your note, and things can go really wildly wrong. So there's financial stress on the other side of that on the other side of that curve. And the personal stress is there as well. And that stress curve goes up exponentially right at that somewhere between A and B. So it's good to know and understand that, because we don't need to push so much on that. And if we're looking at profitability, we can always, there's 3 ways actually to increase profitability, and I'll refer you to Dave Pratt that he can expound on that, and I think he's going to do that this afternoon or sometime. Anyway, he runs Ranching for Profit, and he's a wonderful guy. And anyway, if you're looking for profit, that would be a place to look. Why is this important in terms of rainfall and carbon in the soil and so forth? Because there's 40 million acres of rangeland acres in California. So our little tiny bit of that, I don't know how many acres you all are managing. Some may be managing thousands, maybe some 10, 15, 20, 200, 300, doesn't matter. All of our contributions are really wonderful because we're really wonderful creatures. And as cumulatively, these things really add up. Just think about the potential of 40 million acres. And if you put carbon into the soil, and you can increase the soil carbon on your ranches by 1%, and I did it 7, 11, and 5%. So over time, that can move to that 100% change, which is 1% increase in total soil carbon. And you can accumulate in your rangeland soils another 20,000 acres. And this is potential, and it can be done, and it has been done. And we know examples around the country where it has been done. So if it hasn't been done by us, our question maybe ought to be, how can we do things differently to create those conditions where that is done? And on 40 million acres of rangeland, I asked my Apple iPhone, how much water is that? And I put 40 million times 20,000, and it came up with this. So Apple didn't really even know until I turned my life upside down, the phone on its side, and it came up with this number. That's a game changer. That's a lot of water. And that depends on each of us doing our best, focusing on what we want, nudging sunlight toward that, and coming up with a game changer.